Well, hello. This is Jen T. Grace. I'm the founder of Publish Your Purpose, and I'm here for a book launch conversation about holistic leadership, which I'm so happy that I have your book in my hand as we're having this conversation. And because there's two of you today, I want to start with you, Deborah, and just have you kind of share a little bit about who you are and what your background is, and then I'll put it over to you, Frank.
Well, thanks, Jen. A little bit about me is that I've always been interested in equitable inclusion. And so it seems like in my different journeys in my career, that's always been a part of it. Since it's been a long career, I'll just simply start with relocating to help an organization put their first diversity department in place, which I ended up naming Organizational Effectiveness and Diversity. And it was an international company, Ahold, but they also had businesses on the East Coast mainly until they expanded of the United States. So diversity really started with in the United States. So they wanted a better understanding of it. So I relocated to put in that first department. And that's when I discovered I needed to be able to meet them where they are because they weren't really at diversity at the time. So to explain that and to be able to identify where they were so I could bring them forward with more receptiveness. So I did that for 10 years, and that was to weave it into the fabric of the organization. And then when I left, I started a consulting business. And as of January of this year, I will have been doing that for 18 years, which I thought I would only be doing it for 2 to 5 years. But I absolutely love what I do, and there's a need for it. So I work in 4 sectors: community, business, education, and government, and offer 4 services, which is leadership, strengths coaching, and also strategic planning, inclusionary metrics, and also training and development that I actually call discovery learning. So it's been on this journey to help people and to make systemic change, because that's really what I'm all about.
Yeah, I want to get into that in a few minutes as well. Frank, how about you?
Well, I am a lawyer by training. I spent half my career as a partner in one of the largest firms in the region. And then about halfway through my career, I left there and went into a company to become vice president, secretary, and general counsel. But throughout that time, I've been very involved in all kinds of things in the realm of, if you will, civil rights, and trying to advance the rights of the underrepresented, unrepresented. And that stemmed really from the fact that as a kid, my mother was very attuned to the civil rights movement. And she took me to the March on Washington when I was 7 years old. And one of the things that drew me to the law was I saw that people like Thurgood Marshall and others, as an individual, were able to make a lot of impact on the rights of others. So I liked the fact that enabled me to do that. And so I've continued. I was involved. I was the president of the local ACLU. And when I went to the company, one of the things I said to them, this was at a time when DEI was really just kind of becoming better known and widely adopted. And I said to the CEO, I said, why don't, instead of putting it in a little cubicle over here or a little silo, why don't we send the message to the company that this is important throughout? And because I was responsible for strategic planning and I was the board secretary, I took responsibility for that. And that's something I've just been involved with ever since.
That's fantastic. And I feel like, if we think about why the two of you wrote this book. So it's holistic leadership, and I'm going to make sure I read your subtitle word for word. How to weave diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging principles into your organization's DNA. So I have the question of, why did you collectively write this book? And then also kind of the other question of why now? Because clearly we are in a time where DEI, just those 3 letters, are so polarizing for so many. So Deborah, I want to start with you, just kind of share just a little bit of kind of like what the road was that kind of led actually even to kind of you two being co-authors on this work.
The road that led here is that I'm trying to write a book for like 8-10 years. But I'm a firm believer in things happen for a reason. And this book is really needed at the time that we are in now. And also for me, I wanted to make sure that I informed people and to make sure that people understood not only the American culture, which most people do, to be safe and comfortable, but there's very few people that understand the system within that we live. And so to get people to understand the system so everything is not taken so personal, and how is the right way to do this? Because over the years, and starting with that, with our Holden giant food stores, this is not theory that Frank and I are writing about. This is tested, it's proven, it's been put into place. So really to be able to share that and to inform people, and so that they understand also what's the DNA of our country. And it's really showing up now, the DNA that very few people realize, it's separation. When you understand that, you can better address things and identify what is needed. So for me, it was really about informing people, educating people, meeting them where they are so that we can get to systemic change. Because otherwise, we've just been throwing spaghetti against the wall, and we're still talking about things we talked about 60 and 70 years ago. Because also wanted to make people realize our country takes 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, and then every 20 to 60 years, we take huge leaps backwards. And we're in that 60 year now, taking huge leaps backwards. So it's very important to me to inform people so that I can help enable them to get to systemic change. And Frank and I actually met because our organizations did look at diversity, and we were in the community. And it was usually Frank and I that, didn't know each other, but or usually nodding at each other about something, and maybe the only 2 people in the room that were on the same page. And then we ended up co-chairing the Chamber's Business Diversity Advisory Council, and kind of like history from there. And we also co-founded the Diversity and Inclusion Professionals of Central PA to help them understand the work that they were also trying to do. And Frank, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, I think so. That goes back to 2000. So Deborah and I have known each other and worked together for over 25 years. And really the catalyst for the book, I think Deborah's answered the why now. I mean, frankly, we wanted to, if we could have written and published faster, we would have done it sooner. But as you know, Jen, it takes a little while to put a book together and get it out there. But the catalyst was that we were finding time and again that people embraced the concepts of diversity and trying to be inclusive, but they didn't know how to do it. They were very frustrated. And we also had people saying to us together and separately, no one's ever taken this approach. I like this approach. Both of us have a business background, so we don't come in with an approach that says, you're doing it wrong. This is, why is it taking you so long to understand this? We try to understand the organization, and because we've navigated organizations ourselves, we show people how to do that. In terms of the book itself, why this book, we started out to write a book generally targeted toward those who work in this field. But as we were writing it and as things were evolving around us, we said, that's too narrow. And and the reason it was very important for us to include the word leadership, because we said, really for anyone, whether they're doing this work as part of their job or not, they need to understand how to relate to, how to understand the many different types of people that they're going to be working with. We just last week, we spoke to a conference of business schools, And one of the things we said to him is, don't you think all your leaders, whether they're going to be finance, whether they're studying finance, marketing, all of them, to be a real leader, don't you really need to understand how these principles, how important these principles are, and how they link to the success of any organization? So that's kind of a thumbnail on how we got here.
Yeah. And, when you think about, because I remember just kind of the figuring out the right title, figuring out the right subtitle. And I love that you did include how to weave it into, your organization, because even Deborah behind you, it says, this is not theory, this is how you do it. And I really like that you're coming from that practical, like this is a business imperative approach, because I think that the conversation has shifted dramatically over the last number of years to make it seem like this big scary thing, when there is data in every direction that supports that diverse teams perform better. Like it's the bottom line. So did you have any trepidation? Like, obviously this is the work that you're doing in the world, but did you have any trepidation as you were kind of like nearing the finish line of the publishing process, being like, okay, wow, this is now going to increase our exposure, our visibility, amplify what we're doing? Like, was there any, like, what were your emotions or feelings around that? And Deborah, I'll start with you.
I have to say no, because it's been a mission for a very, very long time. So I was also in politics at one point in my life, got, governors and mayors elected. So I understood that. I understand the system. I understand the culture, the environment. And as Frank knows, and both of us, we put this in the book, it's also about courage, but you also need courage with knowledge. So when you have that knowledge, then you move forward. And if you're on a mission, you just go and not allow somebody to define something for you or make you stop because it's a challenge or it's a barrier, and to understand the difference between the two. But also it's to have more people understand this. And that's why, we wrote this how-to book, because there's so many in this field that really don't know how to do it. And they're searching for things. So at least for me, and I'll just say personally, there was no trepidation, because it needs to be done. It needs to be shared. It needs to make sure people understand how to do this so that we don't not keep repeating things rather than making systemic change.
Mm-hmm. I'm not surprised by that answer at all. Frank?
Yeah, I would say if there is such a thing as the opposite of trepidation, we were chomping at the bit to get, like, oh, we need to get, something would happen in this country and we go, oh, you got to get the book out there. We got to. So if anything, it almost made us more, it fired us up more to get this done and get this out there. And, we were at the very beginning, and this because you were part of it, there was discussion about, well, are you going to use the words diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging? Because there's been, back and forth. And we started this before the executive orders came out. I mean, this is well before that. But I'm a firm believer that there's just no word that is going to satisfy everyone. And we felt it was so important that these principles and what they really mean, not what a lot of people think they mean, but what they really mean, are so important. So yeah, I think Deborah used the word mission. I think we say somewhere, we felt an obligation to get this out there. And just parenthetically, and I've said this to a couple of people, in terms of the trepidation, when I sit and think about what civil rights leaders and so went through to at least get some laws changed, and that was there, there's no concern, there's no fear of that happening to us. And I find it impossible to say, oh gosh, this is really tough, when I think about the people who literally gave their lives on a lot of different fronts. So no, I think we have a unified lack of trepidation and more, let's go.
Yeah. Not surprised at all. Because just having the pleasure of working with you over, this period of time to get this done. And I feel like this is a piece of history and a snapshot of history because, clearly there are voices that are being silenced in many, many, many directions. And the two of you are like, nope, not on my watch. And putting out a book like this that is technically controversial, even though I don't see it as controversial. Obviously, you don't see it as such either. But it's kind of it's interesting to kind of look at this. Like, this is a moment in time, and when you look back at this moment in time, you can be like, yeah, we published a book with all these, censored and banned words in it in the middle of like the hardest part. Like, I think that's pretty freaking awesome, and I'm happy that we're the ones that are helping support this. So thank you for your courage.
Oh, and that's also for the reason for the glossary in the back of the book, to help put those definitions in there for people, because everybody has different definitions, different environments that they're in. So for people to start using this as an internal language, so everyone gets on the same page and not allowing people to put 22 different definitions to just one term.
Yeah. Frank, anything to add? I had to mute your background, so you're muted. Oh, wait. Hang on. You got to unmute.
Wait a minute.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah. I think that captures it. I don't really need to add for the sake of adding.
Yeah. So kind of along these like emotional lines, if we're thinking about just the process, which could be a combination of just the process as well as the content, but did you was there anything kind of like unexpected from an emotional standpoint that kind of like came up for either of you as you were moving through this process? Because obviously, you were saying, Deborah, it's like 8 to 10 years of writing in the making. And then once, I think a lot of times authors are like, oh, the writing is done, the hard part is over. And then the reality is that there's a lot more to do still. So was there anything kind of unexpected in that part of the journey for you, Deborah?
I have to say it wasn't. And if there was, I really negated it. I just ignored it because, again, I was on a mission. And okay, I've been trying to do this for so long. Now we're going to get this done. And the emotions for going through the process, and, Frank and I ran up against some things when you talk about the process and publishing. But no, we were going to get this done and just simply find the way to get it done. So it really wasn't anything that came up that I gave any credence to because, again, I was on a mission. And I think, Frank was the same way, that we know we needed to do this. So.
Yeah, Frank, anything to add?
I don't know that it was unexpected, but it was disappointing to find how many folks just didn't understand what this book was about, and it's just another DEI book, and we have lots of those, and until we got to you guys, of course, but that was one thing. But the other thing I would say, and you've heard me say this on a positive side, is I found it fascinating to learn about the whole process. It's very, I think there's a tendency for would-be authors to romanticize the whole thing, and it's you're in a little cave somewhere, you write this, and boom, the next thing it's a national bestseller. Well, there's a lot of in between point A, and your firm did such a good job of explaining it and creating the right expectations and pacing it. So that I've said this to a number of people that I in addition to the whole getting the book out, it's been really rewarding to learn all these things and see how it goes from the first couple of words typed to something that you can actually hold up and hand to somebody.
Yeah, I think that's the coolest part about this business is that at the end of our work together, we all have something that we can like physically touch that lives on long after all of us. So there's like kind of a legacy component to it. I think that's really, really interesting. And I think, Deborah, when you were saying like you were on a mission, I think that is why having a clear sense of what your purpose is at the start of the process when it comes to writing a book is so important, because you were both so clear of like, this is a non-negotiable, this has to happen no matter what happens, this book has to come out. And because you're serving a bigger mission than yourselves. And I think a lot of times when authors kind of fall off the tracks in their process, it's because they don't have that kind of like deep anchor point to just kind of remember like, oh yeah, this isn't about me. This is about, something bigger. And I feel like the two of you had that kind of front and center this entire process, which I feel like it was probably an attribute to, why it felt smooth. Maybe there were points and times where it wasn't feeling the smoothest, but it felt smooth from my vantage point, that you kind of like really kind of came together in a really positive way and just kind of systematically moved through the process.
I have to say yes to all of that of what you just said. What, to Frank's point, was disappointing to me was the publishing business. And that they were just simply looking for a one topic when it came to DEIB, and not really understanding the how, and not understanding nonfiction, and also didn't want to move from their silo of how they've done business all along, all these years. And so I found them not, and this wasn't just one publisher, it was a number, it was the business, that not forward thinking and not wanting to move out of how they've done things the same way for all these years. It's only, I would say, probably in the last couple of months, I've seen a couple of publishers pay attention now to this. They didn't understand holistic. It had to be one topic, whether it was unconscious bias or training or something like that. They just couldn't get their arms around. And I have to say, they were quite rude at times. And so I have to say, for PYP, you not only understood the holistic view of DEIB, but also understanding the importance of it. And the resources that you provided, that, Frank and I, yeah, we can do this and we can da-da-da-da. And then once we got into it, oh, there's a little bit more to this. But you provided the resources, and your team was just great, no matter what we were working on at the time. And with both of our strategic lenses and, and how we work, I mean, it just really, the flow worked into it. So it was really a pleasure. There wasn't anything that said, oh gosh, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to continue? Not at all, because you also respected what our end in mind was. And it was systemic change, and it was to share, and it was to give people the systemic change journey, and not just do things or that you weren't making systemic change. Like at the conference, I said when Frank and I was doing our presentation, if you're not making systemic change, you need to go find another job. And I could hear the in the audience, right? But I was like, no, I just need to say this to you. Stop wasting your time and your talent and your treasure here. Let's get to systemic change. But sometimes you have to say things to people to make them realize. So it is planting seeds and give people time to digest it. And that's what we needed to do with this book, and just bring people along little by little, but kept building upon it. And it was a real pleasure to work with a publisher that got it, that understood it, but also had so many resources to make it even easier.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. One of the very first books that we published over 10 years ago was a DEI book. So, this has been just kind of who we've been the whole way through. So you don't have to make the case to me how important this work is. Like I know. And to your point, having the very specific lens, because, I think unconscious bias is just thrown around in so many different places. And it's like, that's one piece of such a much larger puzzle. And you're tapping into that larger puzzle to help people really figure this out, which is the systemic change side of things. So I am delighted that this book is existing now in the universe, and it hasn't been out that long. So, there's still, who knows where it's going to be 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 12, 5 years, right? Like to see, like what type of feedback that you're getting from people when you go to conferences and you're speaking or working with clients and they're saying, wow, I hadn't thought of it this way. I feel like I love when people kind of say that, because you can see the light bulb moment that's happening. It's like, okay, now they're going to take some kind of action.
I have to share this is the morning after the conference that we just came back from, everybody that attended our session received a copy of our book. So we're at breakfast, and she's a dean, and one of the deans came over to the table and said, "I read your book last night."
Oh, wow.
So unexpected things that somebody read our book the night that she got it, and she just raved about it. And I actually kept my eye on her during the presentation to see, because you had all these business schools and not really understanding systemic change of what you need to do in this work. So you're doing your presentation, but you're keeping an eye on everybody. And that was unexpected that she took it, and she goes, "I read her," and I read the whole thing, and she had really great feedback. So that was unexpected, and that people were at the table for breakfast and then started to chime in also about it. So that was definitely a pleasure.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And Frank, I want to ask you about the unexpected side too. And, your book is like 140 pages, right? So that is also such a huge piece of this, is that it's not this massive 400-page textbook to try to work your way through. So I feel like that was so much part of this end vision, was how can someone pick it up and read it in a couple of hours, digest it. And so I love that they were able to kind of, read it in their hotel room and then come back to you the following morning. That is exactly why shorter books work better. So I love that. Frank, what about you? What's something unexpected that's kind of happened so far?
Well, I think it was the fact that we got this great opportunity so early on in the process. I mean, and the fact that we were, hustling to try to get the book actually printed so we could get it out to people. And so that has been really, really gratifying. I won't say that the marketing aspect of it is unexpected, because I'm not inexperienced in that, but how multifaceted it is, and also trying to make it work with what we're trying to accomplish. The one thing that's, I think, probably different, I suspect, from a lot of your writers, authors that you have, is where we are in our lives. So, I retired 10 years ago. Now Deborah retired, but she has her own business. But we're not trying to we didn't do this to try to build a brand and a following and, spin-offs and all the other stuff that's out there. You've heard us say several times, we did it for a purpose. And so I think that one of the things we were so focused on that, and our end in mind was getting this new approach out to as many people as we could, which is why we can't just say, well, we don't like marketing. We don't want to market. That doesn't do it. So I would say that's been the most surprising part for me, is just how complex the marketing. Now, again, your organization provides great tools, and Deborah and I are super organized, and of course we've made spreadsheets and all, and I like your pieces about pacing yourself and and all that. So that's been very helpful. But I would just say generally that wasn't something I wasn't as aware of what was going to be involved on that, and we're just getting going. This is not like, oh, we're seasoned veterans that, but, and also the fact that we're not people, when we talk about the book, they, oh, are you going to have, are you going to do a bookstore? Are you going to, and we're like, no, because here's why that doesn't make sense to us. But again, it's fascinating.
Yeah. And I like that you're both coming to it from an approach of curiosity. Deborah, I'm going to take you out and put you back in to see.
Okay. Yeah. I was trying to see how to.
Oh, your video didn't even come back in. Okay. Let's try this again. All right. Well, you are now a black box. So I'm not sure what happened with the technology, but we can hear you still.
I don't know. Do I hit virtual background settings again or something like that?
I don't know. Well, there's always something. There's always something. Well, you were there. We can still hear you, which is the important part. A lot of people are listening to this,
Okay.
versus watching. So, I guess as we're kind of like concluding here, is there anything that I didn't ask you that feels kind of like something that you want to kind of just share, whether it's around kind of the book, the mission, your message, anything like that? And Deborah, I'll start with you.
I think still on the unexpected, I think we have at least 3 that we're having CEOs or senior leadership actually taking our book chapter by chapter, having conversations about it. And that was unexpected this soon. So I think that's really good to understand how to actually use our how-to book, and that you have leaders actually on their own, not, being pushed or saying recommended this is how you can use it, has been really, really, really good. And that there's a receptiveness that it's almost like giving them permission, that they were looking for permission to do this work, but how to do it. And now that they have a how-to, they're actually putting their arms around it, which for me is really, really good.
Yeah, it's exciting because it's amazing when the book is already doing things for you that you had visions for, and it's doing it like within a couple of months of it being out. Like that's a really amazing just feeling to be like, oh yeah, like it's actually working the way I wanted it to.
Yes.
Love that. How about you,
Yeah,
Frank?
I actually, and Deborah might be, I think she is referring to this. The CEO of the organization I work for contacted me and said, "Yeah, I've bought this for the entire executive committee, and we're gonna, we'll talk about it and work through it." So, I think that's the message. Is that this is a book for really everyone who is interested in the principles of, and we make the point, this is about humanity. This isn't about race. It isn't about gender. It's about how we all coexist in our society. And so that doesn't exclude anyone. So our hope is that people will see that and will recommend it to others and say, this is worthwhile, even if, and like I said, whether or not you're doing this work, whether or not you're a chief diversity officer, whatever the title might be, this is, I would liken it, I'd like to think of it the way I thought 7 Habits for Highly Effective People was a very worthwhile training to have gone through when I was in the corporate world, and that's something I continue to use today. Some of the points that are made, and I like to think that there's a lot in our book that is similar in the sense that it's applicable just in life, not just in a particular role or position.
Yeah. You wrote it in a intentionally inclusive way. Oh, shocker.
Oh, now you.
Full circle. I love it. So I'm putting on the bottom of the screen. So it's holisticthoughtleadership.com is where people can check out the book. Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
Fantastic. And so the book is available, wherever you would like to purchase a book. I'm a big fan of bookshop.org. They are a certified B Corp, and they give back to local independent bookstores as an online platform. So that is my preference in terms of where to purchase books. However, if you would like to purchase it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or all the other places, the book is available there. And I definitely recommend people kind of follow along with what the two of you are up to, and perhaps reach out if that is something that you are interested in. So do either of you have any kind of calls to action, if you will, for the folks who might be watching or listening to this?
Yes, I do. Also on our website, there's a tab called Holistic Thoughts. So we attempt to answer all the questions for people. And so that's another way of learning also, and a question you've had but never had an answer to. So we've also put a lot of things on that website to help thought leadership and in this field as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a great place for people to go if they're, especially if they're in an organization where maybe it's not embraced at this moment. It's a good starting point for them to kind of see what others are thinking.
Yes.
Well, and the final chapter of the book is a call to action.
Oh, yes, definitely.
So we would encourage people to buy the book and see what the call to action is.
But I'm going to say, because a lot of people want to go to certain chapters, we're really saying you need to start at the beginning because it is sequential and each chapter builds upon the previous one. And, you know, as Frank said, then when you get there, here's your call to action and you'll understand it more and why. But you really need to start at the beginning because it's information to help you actually do this work and do this work in a systemic change way.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you both so much for the work that you're doing, for being amazing partners in this. And I cannot wait to see what happens in, you know, a year from now, what goodness and good stories you have to share about how this book has helped people. I appreciate you both.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, we wouldn't have gotten here without you guys.
That's right.
My pleasure. All right. Thank you.